I'm almost done with chapter 3 in Orlando. Suddenly a shadow, though there was nothing to cast a shadow, appeared on a bold mountain side opposite. It deepened quickly, and soon a green hollow showed where there had been barren rock before. As she looked, the hollow deepened and widened, and a great park-like space opened in the flank of the hill. Within, she could see an undulating and grassy lawn, and could see oak trees dotted here and there. She could see the ruthless hopping among the branches. She could see the deer stepping delicately from shade to shade, and could even hear the hum of insects and the gentle sighs and shivers of her summer's day in England. After she had gazed entranced for some time, snow began falling. Soon the whole landscape was covered and marked with violet shades instead of yellow sunlight. Now she was heavy carts coming along the road. She saw heavy carts laden with tree trunks, which they were taking. She knew to be sawn for firewood, and then appeared the roofs and belfries and towers and courtyards of her own home. The snow was falling steadily, and she could now hear the slither and plop which it made as it slid down the roof and fell to the ground. The smoke went up from 1,000 chimneys, all was so clear and minute that she could see a dog pecking for a worm to the snow. Then, gradually, the violet shadows deepened and closed over the carts and the lawns and the great house itself. All was swallowed up. Now there was nothing left in the grassy hollow, till instead of the green lawn was only the blazing hillside, which 1,000 vultures seemed to have picked bare. At this, she burst into a passion of tears, and striding back to the gypsies' camp, told them that she must sail for England the very next day. It was happy for her that she did so. Already the young men had plotted her death. Honor, they said, demanded it, for she did not think as they did. Yet they would have been sorry to cut her throat, and welcomed the news of her departure. An English merchant ship, as luck would have it, was already under sail in the harbor, about to return to England, and Orlando, by breaking off another pearl from her necklace, not only paid her passage, but had some banknote left over in her wallet. Those who would have liked to present to the gypsies. They had despised wealth, she knew, and she had to content herself with the graces, which on her part were sincere. Chapter 4. But suddenly guineas left from the sale of the 10th pearl on her string. Orlando bought herself a complete outfit of some clothes as women then wore, and it was in the dress of a young Englishwoman of rank that she now sat on the deck of the enamored lady. It is a strange fact, but a true one, that up to this moment she had scarcely given her sex a thought. Perhaps the Turkish trousers, which she had hitherto worn, had done something to distract her thoughts and the gypsy woman, except In one or two important particulars, differ very little from the gypsy men. At any rate, it was not until she left the coiled skirt from her leg, and the captain offered, with the greatest politeness, to have an awning spread for her on deck, that she realized with the start and the penalties and the privileges of her position. But that start was not of the kind that might have been expected. It was not caused, that is to say, simply and solely by the thought of her chastity, and now she could preserve it. In normal circumstances, a lovely young woman alone would have thought of nothing else. The whole edifice of female government is based on the foundation stone. Chastity is their jewel, their centerpiece, which they run mad to protect, and die when ravished of. But if one has been a man for 30 years or so, and an ambassador into the bargain, if one has held a queen in one's arms and one or two other ladies, if report be true of Leta's relative rank, if one has married a Regina Pepita, and so on, one does not perhaps give such a very great start about that. Orlando's start was of a very complicated kind, and not to be summed up in a trice. Nobody, indeed, ever accused her of being one of those quick wits who run to the end of things in a minute. It took her the entire length of the voyage to realize out of the meaning of her start, and so, at her own pace, we will follow her. Lord, she thought, when she had recovered from her start, stretched herself out at length under her awning. This is a pleasant, lazy way of life, to be sure, but she thought, giving her legs a kick, these skirts are plaguey things to have about one's heels. Yet the stuff, flowered padosoi, is the loveliest in the world. Never say I seen my own skin. Here she laid her hand on her knee, looked to such advantage as now. Could I, however, leap overboard and swim in clothes like these? No. Therefore, I should have to trust to the protection of a blue jacket. Do I object to that? Now do I? She wondered. Here encountered the first knot in the smooth skin of her argument. Dinner came before she had untied it, and then it was the captain himself, Captain Nicholas Benedict Bartolus, a sea captain of distinguished aspect, who did it for her as he helped her to a slice of corned beef. A little fat man, he asked, but let me cut you just the tiniest little slice the size of your fingernails. At those words, a delicious tremor ran through her frame. Birds sang, the torrents rushed. It recalled the feeling of the indescribable pleasure with which she had first seen Sasha hundreds of years ago. When then she had pursued, now she fled. Which is the greater ecstasy, the man's or the woman's? And are they not perhaps the same? No, she thought, this is the most delicious, thanking the captain but refusing. To refuse and see her friend. Well, she would, if he wished it, have the very thinnest, smallest shiver in the world. This was the most delicious of all, to yield and so then smile. For nothing, she thought, regained her couch on deck, and continued the argument, and more heavily than to resist and to yield and to resist. Surely it throws the spirit into such a rapture as nothing else can, so that I'm not sure, she continued, that I can't throw myself overboard for the mere pleasure of being rescued by a blue jacket after all. It must be remembered that she, like a child, entering into possession of a pleasance or toy cupboard. Her argument would not commend themselves to mature women who have had the run of it all their lives. But what use we young fellows in the cockpit of the marine words to say about a woman who threw herself overboard for the pleasure of being rescued by a blue jacket? She said, we had a word for them. I haven't, but we must admit that word. It was disrespectful in the extreme and passing strange on the lady's lips. Lord, Lord, she cried again at the conclusion of her thoughts. Must I then begin to respect the opinion of the other sex, however monstrous I think it? If I wear skirts, if I can't swim, if I have to be rescued by a blue jacket, by God, she cried, I must, upon such a gloom fell over it, candid by nature, and averse to all kinds of equivocation, to tell lies bored her. It seemed to her a roundabout way of going to work, yet she reflected the flowered padel soil, the pleasure of being rescued by a blue jacket. If these were only to be obtained by roundabout ways, roundabout one must go, she supposed. She remembered how, as a young man, she had insisted that woman must be obedient, chaste, sensitive, and exquisitely apparelled. Now I shall have to pay in my own portion for those desires, she reflected, for women are not, judging by my own short experience of this sex, obedient, chaste, sensitive, and exquisitely apparelled by nature. They can only attain these graces without which they may enjoy none of the delights of life by the most tedious discipline. There's the hairdressing, she thought, that alone will take an hour of my morning. There's looking on the looking glass, another hour. There's staying and lacing. There's washing and powdering. There's changing from silk to lace and from lace to paddle soy. There's going chaste, year in, year out. Here, she tossed her foot impatiently, and showed an inch or two of calf. A sailor on the mast, who happened to look down at the moment, started so violently that he missed his footing, and only saved himself by the skin of his teeth. If the sight of my ankles means death to an honest fellow who no doubt has a wife and family to support, I must, in all humanity, keep them covered, Orlando thought. Yet her legs were among kerchief of beauties, and she felt it, thinking that an odd path we had come to when all a woman's beauty has to be kept covered that the sailor may fall from a man's head. A pox on them, she said, realizing for the first time what, in other circumstances, she would have been taught as a child, that is to say, the sacred responsibilities of womanhood. And that's the last oath I shall ever be able to swear, she thought, once I set foot on English soil, and I shall never be able to crack a man over the head, or tell him he lied in his teeth, or draw my sword and run him through the body, or sit among my peers, or wear a coronet, or walk in procession, or sentence a man to death, or lead an army, or prance down Whitehall on a charger, or wear 72 different medals on my breast. All I can do, once I set foot on English soil, is to pour out tea and ask my lords how they like it. Do you like sugar? Do you take cream? And mincing out the words, she was qualified to receive. How low in opinion she was forming of the other sex, the manly, to which it had once been her pride to belong. To fall from a man's head, she thought, because you see a woman's ankle, and dress up like a guy fawkes, and parade the streets so that women may praise you. To deny a woman teaching lest she may laugh at you, to be the slave of the frailest shit in petticoats, and yet to go about as if you were the Lord of creation. Heavens, she thought, what fools they have of us, what fools we are. And here it would seem from some ambiguity in her tones that she was censuring both sexes equally, as if she belonged to neither. And indeed, for the time being, she seemed to vacillate. She was man, she was woman. She knew the secrets, shared the weaknesses of each. It was a most bewildering and whirligig state of mind to be in. The comforts of ignorance seemed utterly denied her. She was a feather blown on a gale. Thus it is no great wonder, as she pitted one sex against the other, and found such alternately full of the most deplorable infirmities, and was not sure to which she belonged. It was no great wonder that she was about to cry out that she would return to Turkey and become a gypsy again when the anchor fell with a great splash into the sea. The sails came tumbling on deck, and she perceived, so sunk had she been in thought that she had seen nothing for several days, that the ship was anchored off the coast of Italy. The captain at once sent to ask the honor of her company ashore with him in the longboat. When she returned the next morning, she stretched herself on her couch under the awning and arranged her draperies and the greatest decorum about her ankles. Ignorant poor as we are compared with the other sex, she thought, continuing the sentence which she had left unfinished the other day, armored with every weapon as they are, while they debar us ever from knowledge of the alphabet, and from these opening words, It is plain that something had happened during the night to give her a push toward defending herself, for she was speaking more as a woman speaks than as a man, yet from a sort of content after all, till they fall from the masthead. Here she gave a great yawn and fell asleep. When she woke, the ship was sailing before a fair breeze, so near the shore that towns on the cliff's edge seemed only kept from slipping into the water by the interposition of some great rock or the twisted roots of some ancient olive tree. The scent of oranges wafted from a million trees, heavy with the fruit, reached her on deck. A score of blue dolphins, twisting their tails, leapt high now and again into the air, stretching her arms out. Arms, she had learnt already, had no such fatal effect as legs. She thanked heaven that she was not prancing down Whitehall on a war horse, nor even sentencing a man to death. Better is it, she thought, to be clothed with poverty and ignorance, which are the dark garments of the female sex. Better to leave the rule and discipline of the world to others. Better be quit of martial ambition, the love of power, and all the other manly desires if so one can more fully enjoy the most exalted rapture, knowing the human spirit, which are, she said aloud, as her habit was when deeply moved, contemplating solitude, love. Praise God that I'm a woman, she cried, and was about to run into extremely following them. Which one is more distressing in woman or man either? Of being proud of her sex when she raves over the singular word, which for all she can do to put it in its place has kept in at the end of the last sentence. Love, love, said Orlando, instantly, which is impetuosity. Look took a human shape, such is its pride. For where another thoughts are content to remain abstract, nothing will satisfy this one, but to put on flesh and blood, mantilla and petticoats, hose and jerkin, and as all Orlando's loves had seen women now through the culpable laggardry of the human frame to adapt itself to convention, though she herself was a woman. It was still a woman she loved, and if the consciousness of being of the same sex had any effect of it, it was to quicken and deepen those feelings which she had had as a man, for such 1,000 hints of mystery became plain to her that were then dark. Now the obscurity which divides the sexes and its innumerable impurities in its gloom was removed, and if there is anything in what the poet says about truth and beauty, this affection gained in beauty what it lost is falsity. At last she cried. She knew Sasha as she was, and in the order of the discovery and in the pursuit of all the treasures which were now revealed, she was so rapt and enchanted that it was as if it